western parts of Wales and western parts of England as well. And that whole feature then is going to march its way eastwards across the country as we go overnight. So similar to last night, really, most places will see some rain at times. The heaviest rain, though, will be across parts of Scotland. Could see some relatively high totals building up, but because it's been so dry recently, it shouldn't cause too many issues. There will be some clear spells overnight, but despite these, because it's relatively unsettled, temperature's not dropping a huge amount, so a mild start to tomorrow, but it will be quite blustery, particularly across northern parts. Some wet and windy weather, risk of gales in exposed spots. Elsewhere, we're talking sunshine and a few showers. The showers most likely towards the north and west, drier towards the southeast with some decent sunshine here, and temperatures, well, widely in the mid to high teens. We may just about scrape into the low 20s. Whatever you're up to this weekend, have a great one.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Recently, Meghan Markle did a cookery show.
She did.
What happened? Because you made a certain comment and she...
I was asked by a national newspaper to basically review the show, what I thought from a chef's perspective. So I did, and really the opinions came across quite strong.
What kind of things did you say? Can you say?
Well, I didn't think it was a great show, to be honest with you. I felt that it was a bit forced and fake and stuff, which I've been on this show on GB News and explained that before. But I think the problems with Meghan was that Netflix are looking for things to do with her. She's not going to be racing cars, and she's not going to be doing this, and she's not going to be doing that. So I think they've kind of thrown her into the whole kind of cookery thing. Make a nice show about it and, try and recoup some money. And
in it, there was a potential that you may have said that she didn't appear to be a great chef, or she might not be able to cook, or...
Well, my understanding...
Recount what you can say, and then we don't want you to get in trouble.
No, I think that, again, I go back to what I just said then. I think they've kind of thrown her into something. They thought to themselves what they're going to do with Meghan next. And basically, they've kind of thought, well, most people can cook. Let's create a cookery show. Let's make her the new Martha Stewart. Let's try and recoup some money. Let's do, I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to bring out pans and knives and tea towels as well as what she's already launched already. And, I think it's, from a chef's perspective, it's very disappointing that streaming sites are, backing people who have got really no experience in the industry and don't really have the right to be teaching people how to cook.
Well, she did make a really nice sort of like fruit rainbow, where she put all the fruit in a thing, in one on the other. And...
That must have been episode 1, because I stopped after episode 1.
Though, do you?
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 o'clock on Saturday, the 24th of May, live across the United Kingdom. This is Saturday Morning Live.
Now, is there a political power struggle in Number 10? Well, there are reports that Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner is at odds with Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves over her plans to slash the department's budget.
And the economic and political turmoil is not confined to Britain. The trend continues across the pond and in Europe as US President Donald Trump threatens a 50% tariff on the EU. We'll have all the latest.
Thousands of criminals are set to avoid prison under new government plans. Up to 43,000 criminals each year will face community sentences under proposals to scrap most jail terms under 12 months. Have we gone soft on crime? We'll be debating that shortly.
And are British villages losing their soul? A TV presenter Jeremy Clarkson thinks so. He's criticised the loss of public services such as pubs and doctors' surgeries in Britain's most rural areas. We'll be debating that.
And animal welfare rules in British zoos are going to be in for their first major overhaul in over a decade. Our reporter Anna Riley has been to Yorkshire Zoo, where the decision is being welcomed.
It'll help us improve our animal welfare, it'll help us improve the conservation work. It just provides some additional clarity for us, so I think it's going to be really helpful.
We have the biggest stories, the boldest opinions and the liveliest debates over the next 2 hours. I'm Miriam Cates.
And I'm Charlie Peters, and your weekend starts here. So much happening this week, Miriam, but I think that sentencing review has caught our interest the most so far. A lot of people very nervous about what it might mean for me. I mean, I look at the number of people being released from prison and I don't think that the probation services can cope. We had a story this week about a grooming gang survivor who just didn't know that her abuser had been released. She found out that there were new charges coming on Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean, the service is in disarray.
And we have astonishing reoffending rates in this country. There is a practical problem. The jails are full, that is an issue, but there must be other solutions. We must be able to build temporary jails quickly. You would have thought of all the things that we did in COVID very quickly, this would be one that was very necessary now. Yeah, it's a sort of area where you want the government to think outside the box and not just pull the plug and say, well, too many people, let's just let them out. And stopping 12-month sentences, I mean, they are ideal sentences for first-time offenders, shoplifters, let's say, who need a very quick slap on the wrist to show them not to do it again. Well, now they know they're not going to end up in prison. It's going to send crime rates soaring.
Now, you've been covering so much this week in the studio. The Chagos deal sort of dominated headlines this week as well. An act of national surrender?
It does seem to be. It's one of those very strange political decisions where neither side has a good answer for why it's happening. But also the EU tariffs are big. When is Donald Trump going to wake up to the fact that we've basically rejoined the EU by the back door? He's not going to want to do a deal with us anymore. Yeah, well, we'll be debating that.
Plenty of views to come, plenty of news to come, and we want to hear what you think about the stories we'll be covering today. You know how to do it by now, gbnews.com/your say. But before we dive into that, another lady in red has all your news headlines. It's Tatiana Sanchez.
Charlie, Miriam, thank you very much. The top stories: thousands of criminals, including knife offenders, could face community sentences instead of short prison terms. It's all in a bid to crack down on overcrowding in prisons, which could see up to 43,000 criminals avoid prison each year. Exceptions, however, will be made for stalking, domestic abuse and order breaches. Rapists and sexual offenders, meanwhile, could be eligible for early release, with the aim of freeing up 10,000 prison spaces. The European Union's trade chief says the 27-member bloc is committed to securing a trade deal with the US based on respect, not threats, adding that the EU's fully engaged and committed to securing a deal that works for both. It comes after President Donald Trump called for 50% tariffs on goods from the European Union into America starting on June 1st. He claimed talks with Brussels are going nowhere. The announcement marks an escalation of Trump's trade war with the EU, which currently has a 10% tariff on all goods being brought into America. Elsewhere, specialist mental health crisis centres will be opened across England over the next decade in a bid to reduce crowding in accident and emergency departments, the NHS has confirmed. 10 hospital trusts have been piloting new assessment centres to deal with people experiencing a mental health crisis. NHS England said the new units would reduce overcrowding in hospitals and relieve pressure on emergency services, including the police. But Andy Bell, the CEO of the Centre for Mental Health, said any new provision needed to be properly funded. The scheme is expected to be expanded nationally to dozens of locations, the government said, as part of its 10-year plan. All 6 people aboard a small plane that crashed into a US neighbourhood have died, investigators confirmed late last night. They also highlighted a number of issues that may have contributed to the incident, including foggy weather conditions. US music agent Dave Shapiro was among those who died on the jet that went down in Murphy Canyon, San Diego, California on Thursday. Transport investigators say that runway lights were out at the time of the incident, and a weather alert system also wasn't working when the pilot made the decision to try to land. Investigators said they came up short and crashed instead. A court in Paris has found 8 people guilty, including the ringleader in the 2016 armed robbery of Kim Kardashian. The gang was accused of stealing around £10 million worth of jewellery, including her diamond engagement ring given to her by then-partner Kanye West while she was staying at a private residence during Paris Fashion Week. In total, 10 people stood trial, 9 men, 1 woman, 2 were acquitted. And finally, zoos will be required to give animals more enclosure space as long overdue welfare reforms come into place. The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs says new standards published today would modernise zoo practices for the first time in over a decade, better protecting species ranging from the majestic snowy owl and golden eagle to iconic elephants and wonders of the sea like stingrays and octopus. The changes will see elephants given larger habitats and bring an end to practices like the long-term tethering of birds of prey and letting visitors touch fish like rays and octopuses. Animal Welfare Minister Baroness Hayman said the move was the first step in the government's plan to deliver the most ambitious welfare reforms in a generation. Those are the latest headlines. For now, more news in half an hour.
Thank you, Tatiana, and welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Miriam Cates and Charlie Peters.
Now, is the Labour cabinet at war? Because reports in the Daily Mail suggest that the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is unhappy about the upcoming departmental spending review, where it seems that her budget for housing may be cut. And that suggestion comes days after it was revealed that Angela Rayner pressed the Chancellor for more tax raids on savers and investors.
Well, those economic pressures at home come as the US President Donald Trump is calling for 50% tariffs on goods from the European Union starting on June the 1st. He claimed that talks with Brussels are going nowhere.
Meanwhile, the EU's trade chief has fired back, saying that any deal must be based on respect, not threats. Well, joining us now to talk through the implications of Trump's tariffs and, of course, our own domestic spending woes is the economic expert David Buick. David, thank you very much for joining us this morning. What chance do we have of respect and not threats leading the way in these negotiations?
Good morning, Charlie. Good morning, Miriam. How long's a piece of string? I mean, when he became president of the United States, Trump made it very, very clear that he was not going to put up with these trade differentials. And he had a point, because in many respects, the way that the United States has lost out significantly over the last 50 years is probably to them unacceptable. But he has a horrible way of delivering it, and it's punitive and dangerous, and he's changed things so many times that he's disrupted the markets. Now, everybody could say, well, who cares about the markets? Well, the markets are very important because of pensions. But the most important thing that the United States government has to do, and this is what absolutely amazes me, that Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary, and Howard Lutnick, who's the Commerce Secretary, they've been in Wall Street since Noah left the Ark. And they know perfectly well that what is being implemented by Trump is nothing short of dangerous. Now, how do you divide between loyalty and insanity? At the moment, they seem to be driving down the road of insanity. Now, the situation is this, is because of the uncertainty, the world at large believes that the United States possibly could go into recession. And one of the problems the United States has got is a catastrophic debt, which has gone up from $18 trillion in 2015 to $26 trillion in 2020, caused, of course, by COVID, to $36 trillion today. Now, that is unprecedented. And the level of interest rates to service that debt, if you just take an average over 10 years, in the course of the last year, it's gone up from 3.65% to 4.5%.
David, sorry to interrupt, David. Can we just go back to the purpose of the tariffs, though, which is to essentially reduce the trade deficit between the US and other countries and other trading blocs. And the EU does have a trade surplus of $200 billion with the US. It's clearly in the US sights. But even Scott Bessent, who you mentioned, openly admitted that the threats are only designed to light a fire under the talks. These tariffs aren't designed to be implemented implemented, are they? They're just designed to bring the EU back to the negotiating table.
Yes, but I don't think whatever he might say, Donald Trump has said to the world at large, I love doing deals. I'm an expert at deals. This isn't a question of a deal. This isn't a question of negotiation. This is a question of doing what I want or we don't deal. And this is the problem that we've got at the moment. We've got total impasse. The reason why this is incredibly dangerous is that it is the question of the supply chain all around the world. You can implement these charges and tariffs overnight. It's all done. But you try undoing them once everything's got in thing. It takes ages. It wrecks the supply chain. It'll wreck production in any kind of manufacturing industry, and it'll wreck the services industry as well. And because the European Union is under fire at the moment, anybody who thinks that the EU, because it's not that the United Kingdom is not part of the EU, that they're going to be affected, I have news for them. If it does go through up to 50%, this is very, very bad for the whole of the European Union and the United Kingdom.
And David, those effects on our domestic spending opportunities, that's going to be quite severe and should be the focus of this discussion in Britain.
Well, it should be. And though the trade deals have been done with the United States, it's actually quite a soft one. And we are obviously relatively encouraged by other deals that are being done with India, which is, of course, very positive. But we've got the spending review coming up, as I know you know, in the next few weeks. And we have no fiscal movement at all. There's no room. And hence, of course, the left part of the Labour Party, particularly Angela Rayner flying the flag for them, has seen it very unhappy with the fuel cuts, of course, which may be reversed in it, but it'll take at least a year to do that. And what she's trying to do is to say, well, you know, people who are earning between 50 and 80,000, they don't need child benefit. The single person earning between those two numbers. Well, that'll only raise £600,000. And also the cut of public services, and particularly the welfare services, by £5 billion, is, I hate to be sarcastic, but a mere bagatelle. It's peanuts. They have to do a serious overhaul. We cannot afford to have 9,200,000 people economically inactive for any period of time. This country will drown if that is the case.
David Buick, thank you so much for your time this morning. David Buick there, an economist. And it's really fascinating, Charlie, isn't it, how these two stories are interlinked. The deal with the EU, Trump's approach to tariffs, and then our own domestic woes, which depends so much on things like our national debt and our trade deficit.
Yes, and it's quite fun, actually, seeing all the briefing going on in the background of this Labour government. That spending review coming up, Miriam, and it's clear, isn't it, that different factions are setting out their stall, trying to undermine each other, but they're playing with very little spending available. So
there is absolutely no room for manoeuvre for the government.
It could get even nastier as they close in on that.
It could. And someone else who's suffering that is Sir Keir Starmer. He could face an investigation by Britain's statistics watchdog over apparently lying to the public about the true cost of surrendering the Chagos Islands to Mauritius.
Now, the Prime Minister has been reported to the Statistics Authority by the Conservative Party. They want the specific data and costing behind the deal to be assessed.
Well, the Ministry of Defence vowed that all costs have been verified by the government's actuary department.
And the deal is reportedly set to cost £101 million every year for 99 years, meaning that the net present value of payments under the treaty will stand at £3.4 billion.
Well, with us now is former Defence Minister Tobias Ellwood. Tobias, thank you so much for joining us. There are a lot of angles to this story. There's the wisdom of the deal itself from a defence point of view. There's the cost of it. And then there's the politics. Let's start with the defence angle. How dangerous is this from a security perspective, the idea that this base will now essentially be controlled or could be controlled by Mauritius?
Yes, and that's a critical question to ask. I mean, let's make it clear. Nobody wants to see the UK hand over any territory. But the background here, as your question implied, is far more complex than the headlines have suggested. We could, as some are calling for, ignore the recent non-binding decisions passed by the International Court of Justice, the UN General Assembly, the International Tribunal for the Laws of the Seas. But the international legal challenge has not stopped. And there's a very real prospect that a fresh, legally binding case supporting Mauritius could win. And that would mean the UK not just losing sovereignty, but potentially the loss of the huge military base as well, impacting not just on us, but of course, our American friends as well. And it's for this reason that President Trump and Marco Rubio stated this is a good deal, guaranteeing access for the next 199 years. And it's America's largest base, their most strategically critical. More widely, we are seeing this gradual demise of global order. So I do look at this through this security lens. What is the nation's long-term interest? And any prospect that we might lose such a vital military asset must be avoided. So do we really want to go down the road, as some are calling for, that we just ignore these, even a binding case? Because that's what's coming over the hill. And then to argue that let's just dismiss it all, you're moving Britain, a P5 member of the United Nations, into a new and weakened place where we no longer honour international law, damaging our reputation as a force for good. And that's exactly what China, what China and Russia wants us to do.
So you disagree with Kemi Badenoch when she said that this is an act of national surrender?
I think it's a situation that I'm afraid far from ideal. Absolutely right. And it's important that those sums that you talked about at the beginning are scrutinized. But given the bigger picture and the view of America, this is where we are. And we must not risk losing this vital military base. As I say, there are going to be fresh court cases ahead, which will be binding. And if they are binding, we could risk losing the base in its entirety. Do we really want to go down that road?
But at the heart of this argument is really how much weight you lay on international law, because these are legal decisions, legal opinions. But we had the Labour MP Mike Tapp on yesterday, and he was defending the government's position and saying that had we not done this deal, within a matter of weeks, the Chagos Islands and the base at Diego Garcia would no longer be able to be defended. But he wasn't clear about who exactly would be attacking the base. It's very difficult to work out what exactly would have happened in the physical world, in the real world, outside of legal minds. What would have actually happened to the base had we not taken this decision?
So I, as Minister for the Middle East and Africa, came across this. We tried to kick this down the road. We didn't want to go down this particular avenue. And the language in the diplomatic circles is done on an advisory note. That's what it is. It's non-binding to say, please step in this direction, because we don't want to go the next step, which will be binding. But I think there's something more important here, and that is connected with America. I stress this is such an important platform for the United States. It's one of the longest runways in the world. They've got B-1s, B-52 bombers there, deep water port. This is all about America's power projection. And I suspect that America will conduct a major attack against Iran to completely remove the nuclear weapons program there. Diego Garcia would 100% be involved.
Sorry, just very quickly, do you think that the government has made a good enough job of defending this deal? You're a defence minister. You'd have been privy to more information about this situation. Do you think they've done a good job of explaining why it's so key? For a lot of people, they say they just don't understand why they've had to make this decision.
Well, I'm trying to explain why the Americans were putting pressure on Britain to secure this deal, because any attack by America from using Diego Garcia prior to a long-term agreement might have fuzzed the waters in getting a longer deal. So that's why the Americans didn't want to jeopardize it in any way. Let's confirm the deal now. It's not ideal at all. It goes back to the 1960s when we didn't separate properly Mauritius, which had been running the island since 1810, since we pushed the French out after we beat Napoleon. So there's a lot of poor decision-making going back in history. This is where we are today. It's far from ideal, but something the worst-case scenario could develop unless we actually agree to where we are today.
Tobias, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you for your time. Tobias Ellwood, former Defence Minister. And I have to say, Charlie, I still find it very difficult to understand why this legal opinion by the ICJ, to which the Americans are not even signed up, has caused us to make such a serious capitulation.
Well, I was asking that question to Tobias there about have they done a good enough job of defending or explaining it, because, frankly, I don't think they have. Perhaps there's information there which is beyond the access to the general public, but they need to make that case in some way.
Yes, and Grant Shapps, the former Defence Secretary, intervened yesterday saying that he's seen all that information and there is nothing in the top-secret advice that prevents Britain from keeping the base. So we may never know.
Yeah, perhaps it's because we have a lawyer at the top of the job. Perhaps. There we go. Well, after the break, we'll be discussing the end of short prison terms, because community sentences seem to be being favoured over jail time. We'll be taking a closer look at that.
Well, you're watching Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Today I'm joined by a nurse and an abuse survivor, Karen Danson. Now, when working at the County Durham and Darlington NHS Foundation Trust, she says that she had to beg her bosses not to let her male-born nurse, identifying as a woman, use their changing rooms, so the female changing rooms. Karen was abused by her father as a child, and this brought back traumas relating to years of abuse. Now, Karen and other Darlington nurses have launched a discrimination claim against their employees. This claim is still progressing, notwithstanding the recent Supreme Court judgment. Can you take us back a little bit to what happened to you as a child, to give us an idea of why you were so nervous about this individual entering a female-only space?
Yeah, so I was sexually abused by my dad when I was a child. It started when I was 6 years old, and it was like 3 times a week, every week for 6 years. It left me with PTSD. Like I say, here I am as an adult, as a nurse trying to give back to people, and I walk into work one day after shift, and there's a man in my changing room, you know, and I didn't know how to react. I thought I was in the wrong place. I thought I'd maybe walked into the wrong changing room. He's there half dressed. As I'm walking down to my locker, you know, he's saying to me, "Are you not getting changed yet?" And I was like, "No." And then he asked me again, and I started panicking, thinking, you know, why is he asking me if I want to get changed? Is he wanting to provoke a reaction? Does he actually want me to get changed in front of him? And then when he asked me a third time, "Are you not getting changed yet?" That was it. I needed to leave. I needed to get out of there. It just reminded me so much of the trauma that I'd experienced with my dad.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. It's 23 minutes past 10, and with us to look through the top stories of the day, we're delighted to be joined by the head of the campaigns at Good Growth Foundation, Teresa Bischoff, and former Conservative MP, former colleague of mine, ex-colleague, Alexander Stafford. Thank you for joining us in the studio. Alex, what story? What should we start with?
Got to start with Angela Rayner, surely.
Well, clearly.
It's too easy.
I know, it is easy, but it's important. It just shows the moment that Labour, just like the Conservative Party, are in a bit of a pickle in themselves. And Angela Rayner has been basically positioning herself over the last 9 months as a rival to Keir Starmer. We know Keir Starmer is, frankly, flailing in the polls, flailing amongst the party. And Angela Rayner is actually building up the support to try and oust him, basically. We know the Labour leadership contest is far more complex than the Conservative one to oust a leader, but she's building up a base. And I think Angela Rayner is actually reaching out to people, especially in sort of the Midlands and the North, who are now flirting with reform, or not flirting anymore, voting for reform. I think she has an appeal. So she's seen this sort of gap in the market. She's pushing forward a message. She's challenging Rachel Reeves. She's now starting to challenge Keir Starmer. She very much is setting up her vision now as who should be as leader, but also saying to Labour members and Labour MPs, look, we can change leaders. There is somebody else to do, and we can do better. Don't be scared.
Teresa, obviously there's a lot of bickering going on in the back rooms of the Labour Party at the moment, trying to fight over upcoming spending review decisions, but they're fighting over peanuts.
I think the reality here is that the public don't really care about this sort of infighting, whether it's with Labour, whether it's with the Tories, or indeed Reform. The framing of the story, of course, has been very unfortunate, but at the core of all of this is a desire to make sure that people feel better off. That's going to be the focus of the spending review, even though there's going to be tough decisions. This Labour government is going to want to focus to make sure that any of the sort of benefits from their growth mission and ambition.
But it isn't the problem that in the winter fuel allowance row, the U-turn, hasn't the Labour government showed that actually they can't see through those tough decisions?
I think with the winter fuel allowance, even at the start, that was a very, very difficult decision for this government. Now, they have worked hard to ensure that the financial situation looks a little bit different. And the moment that it does, they will ensure that they don't make the decisions that will unnecessarily hurt voters.
Alex, do you think that the left of the Labour Party is feeling a bit bolder than it was perhaps at the start of Sir Keir Starmer's premiership? We're also hearing reports today that Angela Rayner is pushing for more money on social housing, for example. And that's already costing billions.
Well, clearly, I think the left of the party, and I remember when I was an MP, I spoke to a very prominent left-wing Labour MP I got to know very well, and their tactic was, the last couple of years, the Conservative Party was basically to shut up and be quiet to get into power. And their plan all along was to get into power and then start making manoeuvres against the right of the party, Keir Starmer and his sort of faction. And this is what they're doing now. And if you look at the local election results again, Keir Starmer's plan isn't working for the Labour Party. So now the left of the party is saying, look, we need an alternative. Let's try and get some Labour messages and socialist messages back into the government, because what Keir Starmer's doing isn't working, either for the economy or for dealing with issues like poverty or even for winning. He's failing on all fronts.
Well, another problem that Labour has, and they will claim they inherited from the Conservatives with some justification, is the problem of completely full jails. We've heard that they're now going to let 40,000 criminals out of prison and scrap, essentially, sentences under 12 months. Do you think we'll see a crime wave as a result of these decisions?
I mean, I would hope not. As you have rightly pointed out, this is something that the Labour government has inherited from the Conservatives' mismanagement of the prison issue. I think the hope is that with the expansion of prison spaces as well, that's been announced, there will be an effort to manage this in the right way, to follow David Gauke's recommendations. I know this is something that Rishi Sunak had intended to do and then decided not to. Obviously, this has led to even more difficulty for what the Labour government now has to deal with. But I would say they are hopeful that there's a way to manage this correctly.
I was outside HMP Wandsworth in September when the first early release scheme kicked into place, and we saw people being released, a third into their sentence, or in some of them, seriously violent criminals. And they were popping champagne outside the prison. People were gathered, listening to music. It was a celebration. This news fundamentally is sort of a pro-crime decision, which is going to be celebrated inside cells.
I wouldn't say that this is a pro-crime decision by any means. I think there has to be a realistic assessment of what needs to be done to ensure that in future we manage prisoners, we manage crime in a better way. Of course, there's going to be trade-offs. It's not great. It's not ideal. It's definitely not what anybody would have wanted, but it's where we are.
I think this decision is unforgivable and disastrous. You could argue, and rightly so, the Conservatives dropped the ball when it came to prison spaces. There's no question. The prisons were full. But Labour are in power now for the best part of a year. They could build prison spaces, they could build emergency prison spaces. But more importantly, they could stop putting in jail the wrong people. They seem to be putting people in jail for sort of thought crimes, for tweeting the wrong things, but letting out the real criminals, the murderers, the people who use knives, the shoplifters. And that, to me, is a big concern.
But isn't the problem our entire approach to incarceration, which is, goes back decades, which is that when people first commit a crime, we let them off, we give them a community service. And there was a report out recently that showed that some criminals commit 45 offences before they're locked up. Wouldn't it actually be better to turn it on its head and lock people up very quickly for short amounts of time, the first offence, so that they then learn the lesson and don't become hardened criminals before they end up in jail?
Well, clearly our criminal system isn't working. We're seeing a huge increase in things like shoplifting at the moment, a massive endemic, and I think this is going to make it worse. But just because our current system isn't working doesn't mean we should let more people out of jail. I think there'd be more of an argument for putting people in jail for longer and giving them the training, the skills, get them rehabilitated into being valuable members of society, rather than just letting them out willy-nilly.
Tracy, it's nice to hear Alex Stafford there concede that the Conservatives were a complete nightmare on prisons, as it were.
Drop the ball.
Drop the ball was his polite framing of putting it that way. But it's clear they've inherited a disaster in Labour. But they're clearly making pretty severe decisions to get around it. On the one hand, you have this early release scheme, but also Shabana Mahmood announcing chemical castration. They're clearly trying to do anything they can to get ahead of the crime wave that many anticipate will come.
Yeah, I think that they are, as you say, taking every single step that they think might be helpful in making sure that crime goes down. And it's something that we look at the Good Growth Foundation as well. It's such a marker of where people think the UK's prosperity is at, of where the UK's well-being is at. And when they see a lot of crime in their communities, they don't think the government is doing well.
Alex, for the sake of balance, I feel compelled to remind you that there was a bill last year that our own government, Conservative government, was trying to get rid of 12 months, less than 12-month sentences, but there's enough backbenchers rebelled that they didn't push ahead with it.
I never voted for early release of prisoners.
But it was nevertheless a plan that was being pushed under the last government as well.
Speaking of sparkling public services, should we talk about the first national rail service on South Western Railway? It's going to be a rail replacement bus service, Alex.
I mean, you can make it up, could you? I mean, let's be generous. You could say, oh, it shows they're making the improvements already by taking people off the trains to fix the lines. That's a very generous way of looking at it. Another way is saying nothing's changing, it's just more incompetence, and we're still having a failing rail system which is being propped up by buses at the same time while this government is going against any sort of vehicular transport. So I presume those buses are going to be driven on diesel.
Teresa, your view?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously a funny headline, but the reality is that at the bottom of it, much like with crime, transport is such an important marker of whether growth is going in the right direction. Things like this are not going to be helpful in communicating with the public that the UK is on the up.
Well, Teresa, Alex, thank you very much. We'll see you again in an hour. But first of all, it's time for our GB News Daily Reflection.
The GB News Daily Reflection.
Hello, I'm Reverend Mike, Vicar in the Church of England. Life is brimming with joys. The gorgeous aroma of the Sunday roast, that first cuddle with your newborn, the last gasp winner in the biggest game of the season. And it's tempting to see these things as mere biology, chemicals firing, senses tingling. But deep down, we know that there's more to these joys. Some moments just shimmer with light from another world, as though heaven were touching earth. James chapter 1 verse 17 says, "Every good gift is from above, from a good Father who delights in giving them." We want to boil them down to atoms, but the Bible invites us to see them as gifts from a gracious giver. Chesterton wrote, "Gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder. There is multiplied joy in a grateful heart." So what do we have that we've not yet given thanks for?
Well, still to come, Jeremy Clarkson says that Britain's villages have lost their souls. We'll be debating that.
Yeah, what do you think? Please do get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. But before we dive into that, let's get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Charlie, thank you. The top stories: thousands of criminals, including knife offenders, could face community sentences instead of short prison terms. It's all in a bid to crack down on overcrowding in prisons, which could see up to 43,000 criminals avoid prison each year. Exceptions, however, will be made for stalking, domestic abuse and order breaches. Rapists and sexual offenders, meanwhile, could be eligible for early release, with the aim of freeing up 10,000 prison spaces. The European Union's trade chief said the 27-member bloc is committed to securing a trade deal with the US based on respect and not threats, adding that the EU's fully engaged and committed to securing a deal that works for both. It comes after President Trump called for 50% tariff on goods from the European Union starting on the 1st of June. He claimed talks with Brussels are going nowhere. The announcement marks an escalation of Trump's trade war with the EU, which currently has a 10% tariff on all goods being brought into America. And specialist mental health crisis centres will be opened across England over the next decade in a bid to reduce crowding in A&E departments, the NHS has confirmed. 10 hospital trusts have been piloting new assessment centres to deal with people experiencing a mental health crisis. NHS England said the new units would reduce overcrowding in hospitals and relieve pressure on emergency services, including the police. But Andy Bell, the CEO of the Centre for Mental Health, said any new provision needed to be properly funded. The scheme is expected to be expanded nationally to dozens of locations, the government said, as part of its 10-year NHS plan. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news from me at 11.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, coming up, we'll be going live to a zoo in Yorkshire to discuss new animal welfare rules coming into force today.
We're also going to be debating an issue sparked by TV presenter Jeremy Clarkson. He says that we haven't got enough soul in our villages because the pubs have been shut down and you can't get a doctor's appointment. Do you agree? Please join us after the break here, Saturday Morning Live, only on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. So we have had some pretty wet weather arrive overnight, and that rain is lingering across eastern parts at the moment, but it is going to push away towards the east as we go through the morning and head towards the afternoon. Behind it, something a bit drier, even some bright spells developing, but also a fair few outbreaks of showery rain, these coming in from the west, and some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side. Despite the fact that there will be more cloud compared to recent days, it's still going to feel warm enough for many, particularly across the eastern parts, and if you get any sunshine, it shouldn't feel too bad at all, temperatures peaking in the low 20s. But as we head towards this evening, there will be further showery outbreaks of rain around across much of Scotland. There's the chance of some scattered showers, some of them on the heavy side, perhaps some brighter or sunny spells towards eastern parts in particular. A cloudier story though across Northern Ireland, and a wetter story with some persistent rain feeding its way in, and that same band of rain will be pushing its way into western parts of Wales and western parts of England as well. And that whole feature then is going to march its way eastwards across the country as we go overnight. So similar to last night really, most places will see some rain at times. The heaviest rain though will be across parts of Scotland. Could see some relatively high totals building up, but because it's been so dry recently, it shouldn't cause too many issues. There will be some clear spells overnight, but despite these, because it's relatively unsettled, temperatures not dropping a huge amount, so a mild start to tomorrow, but it will be quite blustery, particularly across northern parts. Some wet and windy weather, risk of gales in exposed spots. Elsewhere, we're talking sunshine and a few showers. The showers most likely towards the north and west, drier towards the southeast with some decent sunshine here, and temperatures, well, widely in the mid to high teens. We may just about scrape into the low 20s. Whatever you're up to this weekend, have a great one.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nigel is back.
Good evening.
Unfiltered.
Are these proposals bold enough?
Uncompromising.
Will it bring growth?
Unmissable.
We as a country are brilliant.
Nigel Farage returns. Coming soon. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Back to Saturday Morning Live. It's 39 minutes past 10, and we're asking today, are British villages losing their soul?
Well, TV presenter Jeremy Clarkson has heavily criticised the loss of local schools, police officers and shops in some areas of the most rural areas of the UK during his new series of Clarkson's Farm.
Now, Clarkson said that villages are suffering and that loneliness is a big issue in rural areas, and he highlighted the lack of village doctors, bobbies on the beat, village vicars, shops and schools.
So are our villages under threat? And how can we celebrate the great British village? Well, joining us now is former Conservative MP Neil Parish and proud villager and actor Charlie Lawson. Welcome to you both. Now, Charlie, Jeremy Clarkson does have a point here, doesn't he? Especially in some wealthy areas of the south of England. Villages have just become almost areas for second homes. They've lost their heart. It's very difficult for younger people particularly to afford to live there.
Yeah, he does, and I'm aware of that in certain parts of the country. However, I'm on here. How are you, Neil, and everybody? I'm on here to say, well, really how lucky I am up here in Cheshire East. Well, it's Cheshire. They now decide to call it Cheshire East. We live in Prestbury. We have a school. We have a bowling green. We have a village club. We have a pub. We have a vicar, we have a Church of England, and we're very, very lucky. And you can get in to see the doctor if you knock on the door, if you're very poorly. But I do know places that as soon as the pub goes, whether you drink or whether you don't, when the pub goes, you're going downhill pretty fast, and it's a
Oh, I think we might have lost Charlie there for a moment.
Terrible shame. And it's not the people's... it's not, if you lose the boozer, and some of that is the brewery's problem, and it does. I would go along with Jeremy. Now, Jeremy's been in my village a couple of times. I've seen him in the boozer. You know what I mean? So, but I don't think he's wrong. So I'm here to fly the flag for my village, Prestbury, but I am deeply conscious that villages around us in Derbyshire, just over the hill there, are finding life very tough, and facilities and things are deteriorating and dwindling, and I think he has a point.
Neil, what's your take on this? Do you think that the countryside is losing its soul?
I think they've both got village-level broadband connections here, unfortunately.
This could be a key part of it, actually.
Yeah. The gigabit rollout didn't quite stretch.
You're not wrong, because Prestbury is very wealthy, but we've got the crappiest bloody signal in Cheshire.
We can corroborate that.
There we go.
Neil, I don't know if we still got you, but I mean, this is a serious problem. I used to live in a village in Yorkshire that actually did still have all those amenities. It was big enough to, maintain those economies of scale. But nevertheless, there are so many villages that are either havens of very wealthy property owners or very poor and unconnected by public services, and therefore young people can't stay there because there are no opportunities. And I was going to say this, there are very low birth rates in rural areas, and so village schools are closing because they don't have enough pupils.
You know what gives a place soul? Life, young people, energy,
true.
the joy of seeing people running around in the freedom and safety that village life affords you. The countryside is where people want to be to raise their families, and if you haven't got that safety, then that's going to be an issue. That's going to decline as well. Neil, I think we've got you back now. So I want to ask you again, why do you think villages are losing their soul? And do you agree with Jeremy Clarkson?
I do, because I think there's sometimes not enough population to keep the bus services going. The pubs shut. Our local church now has the vicar has 6 parishes. You lose your village shops, and so it can be reversed if you've got a community that will take on perhaps a community bus service. Sometimes you get community shops, and sometimes a community pub. But the trouble with rural villages, and I think young people find it perhaps a little bit boring in the villages. They also find it difficult to get to college and all of those things. Now, I've been born and bred in a village. I farm, I'm on a hamlet, and I've taken a lot of interest in the village, parish council and church and all sorts of things over my lifetime, my political lifetime. But you've got to really take an interest in the village if you're going to keep it going. I think trouble is too now, houses have got very dear in villages. So, a lot of people come to retire, which is great, but they don't always want to take on the community jobs. And I think, this is where villages are challenging. But I still love our rurality and our villages, but we got to fight for them. And I think, resources have got to be put there. I think Jeremy Clarkson raised the issue on doctor surgeries. I mean, it's all right if you can get past the receptionist, isn't it, at a doctor's surgery, then you can get an appointment with a doctor. But getting past the receptionist is almost impossible. but I slightly exaggerate. But it's a lottery, the services, and of course because we're in smaller numbers, it always it makes it more difficult. But I would still not abandon my own village.
So Charlie, just a last word from you. What's the answer there? Neil talked about investment, and if you look at government investment over recent 2 or 3 decades, it's almost entirely been in cities. It's no wonder that villages have lost out. Is it time for a bit of redistribution?
Well, the trouble is, and Neil knows, when you say it's largely down to the people of the village, a lot of that is true. I mean, my Debbie ran Presbury's farm shop. We opened a farm shop in the village, which until Aldi and Lidl opened up in the next 2 wee towns, we did very well. 6 out of 8 years, we were raking it in, and the village absolutely loved it. But of course, then Aldi and Lidl started selling British produce at half the price that we could get it on the shelves, because we had to butcher it, buy it, butcher it, and all the rest of it. So we did try. I think where we're very lucky is that there is a natural pool of wealth where we are. There always has been. But I think you probably find, Neil would maybe agree with me, that the old villages with the little cobbled streets, which perhaps had a mining community or whatever, I think you'll find those are the ones that are going rapidly. We would be a sort of a golden triangle. You've got Alderley Edge, Wilmslow and Presbury, and you're half an hour from Manchester.
Sorry, Charlie, to interrupt. We've got to move on, but thank you very much, Charlie Lawson and Neil Parish, for joining us today. Shame about the countryside broadband that cut off our debate a little bit earlier. One point I'd like to make, Miriam, is that I do feel as though the war on cars is a big issue here as well. We didn't have time to get through it there, but if you can't drive around and it's more expensive to maintain a car, how are you going to be in the countryside?
The Hungarians have just announced a policy where they're going to be subsidising village pubs and village shops to keep them alive. So there you go. Could be an idea. Well, still coming up, we'll be speaking to our reporter Anna Riley, who is joined by the CEO of Chester Zoo on the day that welfare reforms in zoos come into place.
But first, if you are in search of some holiday sun, here's that forecast for our top European destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Whilst western parts of the Mediterranean are having some largely fine weather, it's a different story in the east. Here we have the risk of some heavy showers, which could bring some thunder, even some high rainfall totals, causing problems across parts of Greece, Bulgaria and into Turkey as well. Like I said, though, further west, it's a drier picture, some showery bursts round, but also a decent amount of sunshine on offer. And in the sunshine, it's going to feel pretty warm, if not hot as well.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. And animal welfare regulation is being updated today with the introduction of new standards of modern zoo practice for Great Britain.
Well, let's go to Chester Zoo now and join our reporter Anna Riley, who's with the CEO of the zoo, Jamie Kristen.
Yes, we're with Jamie, and we're also with Meru, the giraffe you may be able to just see behind us there. We're here today as Chester Zoo have had a big part in these new reforms. They've worked closely with DEFRA, these reforms being the first of a kind for a decade, improving animal welfare in zoos. Jamie, thank you for joining us. Just tell us about these new standards of practice.
Well, as you said, it's the first time that the standards have been revised since 2012. We've been working really hard with DEFRA. What they do is actually evolve around what a modern conservation zoo is doing at the moment, and Chester, biggest zoo in the UK, has been helping DEFRA get these standards ready and get them out for the last 2 years or so. And why is it so important that all zoos follow the same standards? I know Chester Zoo already has a very good record. Yeah, absolutely. You know, Chester, we do have an excellent record here, but what we want to do is make sure that all zoos and aquariums in the UK are at the same standard. All zoos and aquariums get inspected every 6 years, and these new standards will be in force in the next 24 months to make sure that they're all compliant. And what are the main new standards, the sort of headlines that have come out of this? Well, to a visitor, there won't seem much difference. A lot of the standards are around processes and procedures, keeping of records, etc. Making sure and continue that the public and staff are safe within zoos and aquariums. But the main three things are not tethering birds of prey. It's not a practice that we do here at Chester. In aquariums, the removal of touch pools, so not letting visitors touch fish in aquariums. And then here at Chester, we have 3 Asian elephants, and we'll be complying with increasing the size of that outdoor habitat. In fact, we've had plans to increase the size of that habitat for the last 2 or 3 years. And conservation's a big part of it as well? Yeah, absolutely. You know, here at Chester, we work in 21 countries around the world. We've got people across in the field all the time. And so, you know, bringing in things like conservation standards, education, research and science, that's what a modern conservation zoo is all about, and we're really pleased that they're within the standards. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you for joining us this morning on GB News. So that's briefly the new standards that zoos and aquariums will have to put in place, and they've got 2 years to do that.
Thank you, Anna. It's a shame the giraffe wandered off there. Maybe he was camera shy, Charlie. Well, don't forget you can stay with us all day, not just on TV, but also on radio and your smart speaker. So to listen to us on your smart speaker, just say, play GB News on TuneIn.
Well, if you do walk away from the TV, you will miss shots of the giraffe, unfortunately. But please do take us on the road with you. And we've got lots more to come up on Saturday Morning Live today, including more of today's top stories. There'll be a look at Angela Rayner's pledge for more cash for social housing, and what's the latest on Prince Harry's visa row. We've also got a breaking Mark White exclusive coming up in the next hour. Don't go anywhere.
positive outlook through the night, we'll power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's a cloudy picture to start this long bank holiday weekend. Drizzle in places, we may see some brightness, but it is going to be feeling muggy out there. Taking a look at the bigger picture, this is that front that brought rain overnight. We'll see a bit of a squeeze in the ice bars and it will be turning particularly windy later on. So that rain has cleared its way through. It might turn a little bit brighter, especially across central parts of England. May even see just the shower developing. Out towards the west, cloudy here with outbreaks of rain and drizzle on and off before heavier rain arrives later. Otherwise, temperatures, well, it's a warm day out there, but humid and muggy with all that cloud and moisture. So as we go through Saturday evening and overnight, it's a cloudy picture across Scotland. Any breaks may just see some showers developing across eastern areas. Otherwise, a damp end to the day across Northern Ireland, actually with some heavy spells of rain moving through and the winds also picking up. Across much of England and Wales as well, we hold on to a lot of cloud and on-off rain. So as we go through the overnight period, then this band of rain will quickly move its way north and westwards, heavy especially across parts of Scotland with coastal gales as well. That rain will gradually clear across the southeast as we go through the early hours. Some clear spells behind that, but then some blustery showers. Actually, it's still going to be a mild night out there, but it will start turning cooler and fresher as we go through Sunday. So heavy spells of rain across Orkney and Shetland, that will gradually clear its way through, and then it's a case of sunny spells and blustery showers, most frequent across the north and west, especially Northern Ireland, Scotland, northwest England. Brighter and drier across the southeast, highs of 20 degrees, but actually feeling fresher. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you, driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It has plenty of room for your family of four, comes complete with kitchen, bathroom and all the space you'll need for life on the road. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 a.m. on Saturday, the 24th of May. Live across the United Kingdom, this is Saturday Morning Live.
And we have a breaking exclusive story this morning. French authorities have been condemned for detaining 2 British fishing boats in the same week that the Prime Minister was heavily criticised and accused of surrendering UK fishing rights to the EU. Mark White will be joining us to bring us up to date.
And thousands of criminals are set to avoid prison under new government plans. Up to 43,000 criminals each year will face community sentences under proposals to scrap most jail terms under 12 months. Have we gone soft on crime? We'll be debating that shortly.
And on those reports of the Labour cabinet being at war today, it's now emerged that Angela Rayner is specifically pushing for a major increase in spending on social housing before the conclusion of the government's spending review, which is emphasising tensions. We'll be delving into some shocking statistics.
And the US President Donald Trump thinks he has the solution to bringing down British energy bills, drilling more North Sea oil. This comes as the Conservative claim that Scotland will not reach net zero until 2080, some 35 years after its target date. So, is the net zero dream over?
And later on in this hour, Niall Gardner, the man who is part of the think tank who pushed for Prince Harry's visa details to be exposed, will join us in the studio to reflect on the case and what comparisons, if any, can be made between President Trump and Keir Starmer's administrations. The biggest stories, the boldest opinions and the liveliest debates over the next hour. I'm Miriam Cates.
And I'm Charlie Peters, and your weekend starts here. Thanks for joining us this morning. We do have a big breaking news exclusive from our home and security editor, Mark White, in a moment from the English Channel. Quite an extraordinary story, Miriam.
Absolutely. And don't forget, we want to hear from you throughout the hour. Send your views and comments to gbnews.com/your say. But first of all, here are your news headlines.
Miriam, thank you. The top stories. We start with some breaking news that 3 boys and a woman have died in a house fire in Brent in northwest London. Met police officers are investigating after being called to assist firefighters in Tillet Close and Stonebridge near Wembley shortly after 1:20 this morning. A 43-year-old woman and 3 boys aged 15, 8 and 4 died at the scene, the force said. 2 others were taken to hospital. Police said they're awaiting an update on their conditions. A 41-year-old man was arrested at the scene in connection with the incident and remains in custody. More on that breaking story as we get it. And in some more breaking news this hour, at least 14 people have been injured in a major Russian missile and drone attack on Kyiv, according to city authorities there. Russia launched 250 drones and 14 ballistic missiles against Kyiv, Ukraine's Air Force said, causing fires in residential buildings. It was one of the biggest combined aerial assaults on the city since the war began. The Air Force said it had downed 6 missiles and 245 drones. With each such attack, the world becomes more certain that the cause of prolonging the war lies in Moscow, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on X. The barrage came hours after Russia and Ukraine took part in a prisoner swap agreed after talks between the 2 countries' officials in Turkey. Speaking overnight, Zelensky said only additional sanctions targeting key sectors of the Russian economy could push Moscow to agree to a ceasefire. Elsewhere, thousands of criminals, including knife offenders, could face community sentences instead of short prison terms. It's all in a bid to crack down on overcrowding in prisons, which could see up to 43,000 criminals avoid prison each year. Exceptions, however, will be made for stalking, domestic abuse and order breaches. Rapists and sexual offenders, meanwhile, could be eligible for early release, with the aim of freeing up to 10,000 spaces.
The European Union's trade chief said the 27-member bloc is committed to securing a trade deal with the US based on respect, not threats, adding that the EU's fully engaged and committed to securing a deal that works for both. It comes after President Trump called for 50% tariffs on goods from the European Union starting on the 1st of June. He claimed talks with Brussels are going nowhere. The announcement marks an escalation of Trump's trade war with the EU, which currently has a 10% tariff on all goods being brought into the US. Specialist mental health crisis centres will be opened across England over the next decade in a bid to reduce crowding in A&D departments, the NHS has confirmed. 10 hospital trusts have been piloting new assessment centres to deal with people experiencing a mental health crisis. NHS England said the new units would reduce overcrowding in hospitals and relieve pressure on emergency services, including the police. But Andy Bell, the CEO of the Centre for Mental Health, said any new provision needed to be properly funded. The scheme's expected to be expanded nationally to dozens of locations, the government said, as part of its 10-year plan. A court in Paris has found 8 people guilty, including the ringleader in the 2016 armed robbery of Kim Kardashian. The gang was accused of stealing around £10 million worth of jewellery, including her diamond engagement ring given to her by then-partner Kanye West while she was staying at a private residence during Paris Fashion Week. In total, 10 people stood trial, 9 men, 1 woman, 2 were acquitted. And finally, zoos will be required to give animals more enclosure space as long overdue welfare reforms come into place. The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs says new standards published today would modernise zoo practices for the first time in over a decade, better protecting species ranging from the majestic snowy owl and golden eagle to iconic elephants and wonders of the sea like stingrays and octopus. The changes will see elephants given larger habitats and bring an end to practices like the long-term tethering of birds of prey and also letting visitors touch some fish like rays and octopuses. Animal Welfare Minister Baroness Hayman said the move was the first step in the government's plan to deliver the most ambitious welfare reforms in a generation. And those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana, and welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Now, as you just heard there with Tatiana Sanchez, a man has been arrested after a woman and 3 boys died in a house fire in northwest London.
Yes, police were called to assist the London Fire Brigade at the scene of the blaze in Tillet Close, Stonebridge, at 1:22 a.m. on Saturday. A 43-year-old woman and 3 boys, aged 15, 8 and 4, died at the scene, the Metropolitan Police have said.
Now, their next of kin have been informed, the force added, and 2 other people were taken to hospital by the London Ambulance Service. At this stage, their condition is unknown. We've also been told that a 41-year-old man was arrested at the scene in connection with the incident and remains in custody.
Well, we'll keep you updated on that story throughout the day on GB News. And another breaking exclusive now from Mark White this morning. French authorities have been condemned for detaining 2 British fishing boats in the same week that the Prime Minister was heavily criticised and accused of surrendering UK fishing rights to the EU.
Now, in this latest enforcement operation, a French maritime office confirmed that a patrol vessel had intercepted and seized a British trawler in the English Channel. Now, the incident happened on Thursday as a record number of small boat migrants crossed the Channel. Well, let's join our Home Affairs editor, Mark White, now. Mark, this is an extraordinary development.
Yes, and news of that second boat having been seized by the French just days after the first vessel was seized by a French patrol is just filtering down to the fishing community now, and those that I've briefly managed to speak to would be incandescent, I think is a fair description of the way in which they are greeting the news. So the vessel that we believe has been seized, according to GB News sources, is the Lady T, a catamaran small fishing boat that was intercepted and detained detained by a French patrol vessel off the Baie de Somme in the English Channel on Thursday. Now, this is just hours after we had a record day of 825 migrants arriving across the English Channel on the Wednesday. That vessel, the crew were detained and it was taken to Boulogne-sur-Mer, and it is currently tied up in Boulogne Harbour being investigated for fishing, apparently, according to the French, without a licence. And of course, it just comes days after the Prime Minister was heavily criticised over his deal with the EU that gives EU trawlers access to our fishing grounds for 12 more years. That's been roundly criticised by the vast majority of people within fishing in this country who say it is not a good deal for British fishermen. Of course, the Prime Minister argues otherwise, but that is the view of many within the fishing industry. I want to bring you a quote just from one fisherman based out of Dover that I just managed to speak to in the last few minutes, worth bringing to you. He said, "This is outrageous. It's so typical of the French. They should be totally focused on trying to prevent the daily illegal incursions by migrants into the Channel. Instead, we're seeing record numbers of illegals crossing UK waters, escorted by French patrols. And the only actual enforcement work," he says, "that they're doing is targeting British fishermen." Now, this, as I say, just comes days after another British trawler, the Francesca, was again boarded and detained by French officers. That vessel was fishing off Blatz, the island, and has been taken to Brest, where it is still tied up this Saturday morning, again suspected of fishing without a licence. I mean, what British fishermen will tell you is that the issue around licences that are granted by the EU is never fair. It's highly complex. It's difficult sometimes to know exactly the days that they're allowed or not allowed to fish in certain areas, etc. But they believe they are being targeted unfairly by the French, and as you heard there from that skipper, they believe the French should be concentrating on the more prescient issue of these hundreds of illegal migrants crossing the English Channel on a regular basis.
And Mark, just reading your report now that you've sent in, you also stressed that these detentions of these trawlers that was delivered just days before Sir Keir Starmer brought forward and was heavily criticised for that so-called landmark deal with the EU over fishing rights. The Labour government must be quite happy, in fact, that you've released this story and you've got this information on the Saturday, because this would have caused an uproar before that deal.
Well, it would have been deeply uncomfortable. The first of those vessels that was seized just 48 hours, less than that, before this deal was actually signed. But obviously the news got out afterwards. And then, of course, this second boat just on Thursday there to be seized as well. That news only just being confirmed to me now by the French Maritime Prefecture. It's worth bringing you the quote from them. They say that the vessel itself was being intercepted and boarded by the Pulvier, which is a French patrol vessel, that the sailors on board that Navy ship assessed that this vessel was fishing in that area in the Baie de Somme without a licence. Now, I should say it's not been confirmed as Lady T, but our sources suggest that it was the catamaran Lady T. On marine traffic apps you can look at, you can see it's currently tied up in Boulogne, and looking back on sort of tracking its course, it was indeed in the fishing grounds of the Baie de Somme just a couple of days ago. So we're endeavouring to reach out and speak to the crew of this vessel and indeed others within the fishing industry who understandably are outraged at this, because they see it as a one-way street and grossly unfair, the way in which they believe the EU has access to our fishing grounds, and the licences granted are much easier to obtain for these EU fishing vessels, and it doesn't often work the other way around just as easily.
Mark White, thank you very much for that breaking news story. And yeah, what timing there, Charlie,
Yes.
for such news?
Yes, I have to say, I think a lot of people will be listening to that report and thinking, well, it is remarkable which small boats the French authorities can intercept and take back to France. But they did give that statement saying that they were investigating something. So there we go. Thank you very much, Mark White. Well, let's move on now, Miriam, because there are splits emerging in the Labour cabinet.
I know. Well, apparently the last government was brought down by splits, but it seems to be happening again. And reports in the Daily Mail suggest that the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is unhappy about the upcoming departmental spending review, where it seems that her budget for housing might be cut. And that suggestion comes days after it was revealed that Angela Rayner pressed the Chancellor for more tax raids on savers and investors.
Well, joining us now is the Deputy Political Editor of The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikulova. Anna, thank you so much for joining us this morning. This infighting going on in the Labour cabinet, do they have the spending opportunities to really be scrapping at each other for extra cash?
Well, I think this is more, it is expected ahead of the spending review because Angela Rayner's department is one of the unprotected departments. And as far as reports are concerned, she is really looking like cuts to her budget might be on the table. And that is a big threat to her main project of delivery, which is building this 1.5 million homes target, which is, very, very difficult to reach in the best of times, never mind when your budget's getting squeezed. So you can look at this a little bit like the inevitable wrangling before a spending review where cabinet ministers throw their weight around and really try and say to the Treasury, look, don't you dare come for us. But you could also very much look at it as the inevitable precursor to a leadership pitch, which combined with Angela Rayner's absolutely sensational memo about tax rises proposals to Rachel Reeves can be seen in the round. Whoever leaked it, the fact that she even put it in writing and tread on Rachel Reeves's toes in such an outright way shows that she is on the march.
Do you think, though, sometimes, Anna, that there is the sense that politicians can't really win? If they toe the line and do exactly what the Prime Minister says, they're accused of being sheep. But if they put their own opinions and have some ideas and have some debate and don't agree on everything, then suddenly it's infighting.
Well, look, I think you're right that, there is a certain level of debate that's required. That is what the cabinet table is for, those cabinet meetings. But I think when you're getting headlines like today and front pages saying that Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, is at war with the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, then that's a bit of a problem for the government.
And Anna, let's talk about another headline leading the papers today. 43,000 criminals could be avoiding prison each year. That's what the Telegraph are saying in their new analysis. What do you make of this new crime and justice announcements coming through Shabana Mahmood this week? Do you think they're going to be effective enough to sort of stem what is anticipated to be a potential crime wave as a consequence of these early release measures?
Well, so, of course, let's look at the context. The early release measures are expected to be implemented off the back of a sentencing review that came out this week, which is designed to stem the crisis in prisons. So prisons are running out of places. That's why these proposals have been put forward. But the inevitable question is, why is the government going to be letting out or not imprisoning burglars, thieves, those sort of criminals that typically get up to 12 months, which is what this relaxed sentencing is going to achieve. Now, the government says we're going to put them in the community, we're going to focus more on rehabilitation, we're going to use technology to be tougher. But at the end of the day, if they're not going to prison, then there's a big question mark about how effective those things are going to be.
Anna, do you think there's a sense that this government is running into exactly the same intractable problems that the Conservatives face, whether that's house building, the economy, public debt, crime and justice, and that actually The Labour Party must be feeling pretty depressed at the moment at their prospects of solving any of these problems before the next election.
Well, it's an incredibly difficult economy. Post-COVID, there are big structural problems that both governments inherited, as you say, and we are increasingly buffeted by global events, global economic shocks. There's about to be a new one with Donald Trump's latest tariffs on the EU. So those things are all fair, but equally the government doesn't help itself with things like decisions on the union settlements, decisions on borrowing for certain things that are their priorities, which have had a knock-on effect on making growth worse, inflationary measures on businesses. So, you know, you're right, it is a very difficult situation, but it's also not correct to say that politicians don't have any responsibility for it.
Anna, just going back to this prison story, one of our viewers has written in Alice in Wonderland. She says, what and who are they freeing up spaces for? People writing tweets, people not paying council tax, driving offences. She says that there are lots of people in jail who she says shouldn't be there. And we're seeing stories, aren't we, day in, day out about people being investigated, often in a very heavy-handed manner, for social media posts or even holding up placards. Do you anticipate there could be a political intervention from Labour on that issue to show that they're not soft touch and they are only going to be releasing some of the weaker offenders and not putting people in prison for social media posts?
I think there have been very few examples of people in prison for social media posts. I think the outrage has been over very high-handed police interventions. But I think, you know, even if they get sentenced, they tend to get suspended sentences. This very much is a crisis of actual prison places, including for violent criminals, running out. So it's correct to be tackling it. However, the big question is why can't more prison places be created as opposed to trying to free up sentencing so that burglars and thieves, which, you know, a lot of people say is now quite gang related. So to say that these burglaries are minor is often really false.
Well, thank you very much for that, Anna. And don't go anywhere, because still to come, we are going to be sticking with Angela Rayner because she is specifically pushing for a major increase in spending on social housing. And we'll be taking a closer look at the data behind Britain's housing crisis.
And we'll keep you updated on that breaking news this morning after 3 boys and a 43-year-old woman have died in a house fire in north-west London. We'll hopefully have a reporter on the scene there shortly. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel. Stay with us.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
So a new book will challenge the conventional view of Alzheimer's, claiming that for the vast majority of people, it is not an inevitable part of ageing, but something that can actually be prevented.
So we're joining us today with Patrick Holford, chair of the Alzheimer's Prevention Expert Group, who joins us now. Patrick, it's a very powerful message, the idea that you can prevent Alzheimer's. There seems to be a sense that it's just inevitable with ageing for a lot of people. Why is it not?
It's not inevitable, because half of people don't get it. And one point to make very clearly is that less than 1 in 100 cases are caused by genes. So there's a few very, very rare genes which will cause Alzheimer's. So possibly for up to 99%, we can prevent it. And even a major UK biobank study, which, by the way, left out 2 of the most important risk factors, for reasons I'll explain, concluded that 73% can be prevented. Now, the terrible thing about Alzheimer's, which is really a shrinkage of the brain, is once you've got holes in your brain, there is no way to reverse that. the rate of brain shrinkage in people with pre-dementia reduced by 73%. In the latest drug, donanemab, the rate of brain shrinkage increased by 20%. So what we're really in right now is a pharmaceutically led sort of industry that is pushing for a cure. I don't think a cure will come because there isn't a single point.
Well, the book is Alzheimer's Prevention is the Cure. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Foodforthebrain.org.
Patrick
I'm doing
Holford,
that.
chair of the Alzheimer's Prevention Expert Group.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's 25 minutes past 11. Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. And joining us to look through the top stories of the day, we are delighted to be joined by the head of campaigns at the Good Growth Foundation, Theresa Bischoff, and former Conservative MP Alex Stafford. Thank you both very much for joining us. And let's start with this top story in The Telegraph about a protester who last year was charged for mocking Hezbollah with a placard that was a cartoon, a satirical cartoon, and was arrested and kept for some time and even charged, although it has been dropped, because he was offensive to Hezbollah.
I mean, this is absolutely bonkers. Today we've been talking about prisoners being released from jail early, serious people with knives, criminals, yet we're arresting people for mocking a prescribed terrorist organisation. First of all, you shouldn't be arrested for mocking, frankly, anyone, let alone a prescribed terrorist organisation that has killed, over the years, thousands upon thousands of people. We should be mocking. People should be mocking all terrorists to show what ridiculousness their twisted ideologies are. And the fact the Met are wasting police time, police resources to challenge those sort of things is absolutely crazy. This is another attack on freedom of speech.
Well, Theresa, I have to say, Miriam and I were astonished looking at this story this morning, in particular watching footage of the police interview, because the man who was arrested was asked if he believed that his placard attacking Hassan Nasrallah would offend clearly pro-Hezbollah and anti-Israel activists. Is that a space for the law to be involved in?
I think we were discussing this earlier backstage as well. It's obviously a very sensitive situation, and the Met Police have said that it's not right for the police officer to be questioning in that way. There must have been a mistake. I'm not clear on what happened, but I agree that, you know, mocking pro-terrorism, it's not.
But I also think it's insulting for those people who on the march. It was a pro-Palestine march, saying if you're pro-Palestine, you're naturally going to be supportive of a terrorist organisation.
Yeah, that's also true.
You can be legitimately concerned about what's going on in Gaza and Palestine and also not support terrorists. The two are not synonymous. And that is a bizarre conflation in the police's mind, the Met Police's, that the two are synonymous. And that is really dangerous.
It feels to me, Miriam, that they're so concerned, the police, of this escalating in any way, that they are keener on maintaining the peace than they are actually on keeping people's freedom of speech and the opportunity to actually express strong views about terrorists, for goodness
Well, absolutely, and it's not something we've been used to in the UK. Well, actually, it's more like policing was in Northern Ireland, keeping groups apart rather than enforcing the law equally. But we obviously have some problems with our law in terms of free speech that probably need looking at, but there also seem to be problems endemic in the police force. I mean, this is not the only case of police misinterpreting the law, coming down harder on one side than the other. I mean, the police officer clearly didn't know that Hezbollah were a prescribed group.
I mean, I feel like it's strong to assume that she didn't know that they are. I mean, she might have misspoken. We just don't know. But I absolutely agree that this is something that we need to be extremely thorough about, because there really isn't any space for mistakes like this.
Well, the Met Police have given us a statement. They said that a man was charged following a careful consideration of the evidence. We will reflect on the CPS decision not to proceed with the case, applying any learning to future investigations. The officer who interviewed the man clearly misspoke when she described those in the protest as pro-Hezbollah instead of pro-Palestinian.
And a CPS spokesman said, we take any allegations of criminality associated with protests seriously and balance this against the right to peaceful and lawful protests when determining if an offence has been committed. We recognise the need for all communities to have confidence in our prosecutorial decisions, and we will continue to work with those affected by the ongoing protests.
Right, a bit of a gear change here. We're going to go away from Hezbollah and the police to DIY. Alex Stafford, doing DIY without looking at the handbook gives men a masculinity boost, according to Astana. You've outed yourself, I think, just now as a handbook reader.
I'm a handbook reader, a DIY hater. I know it's the bank holiday weekend, but I will not be getting out the handy drill and the tools this weekend.
You could make a nice placard.
We could do, yes. We're going out marching somewhere. It'd be lovely, DIY. And now I've got some daughters at school, do one for the school project as well.
Absolutely.
But I do think it does get to the nub that people like not taking orders, almost. It's quite a very British thing of doing our own thing, going out there, ignoring the rules and orders. But actually, if you don't follow the guidebook or the handbook, it often takes twice as long. And I think, actually, it's probably better to follow the handbook. And I'm asking myself, I'm not that masculine, clearly.
I think this is a really interesting story because there are really good evolutionary reasons for feeling a boost when you achieve something creative and practical and physical, aren't there? I mean, it's to encourage you to do those things.
I mean, I think in that same report, there's talk about the fact that carrying pints without spilling provides a boost. I would absolutely agree. That's one of the top 3 feelings that you could ever get on a weekend. I'm actually moving this weekend, so I'm very much hoping that anybody who can build successfully an IKEA furniture piece without looking at the instructions and feels good about it after gets in touch, because I'm looking for that.
There is nothing more emasculating than dropping a pint when you're carrying several towards a table.
But also, they're so expensive now. That's £3 on the floor.
That's
you can't do that.
You absolutely cannot be doing that.
I think the funniest thing about modern instructions, though, is they're always a translation from a different language, from Chinese, and actually sometimes it's easier to do it without the instructions because the translation.
I'm going to say it's easier to read the Chinese and just have a go.
Well, you know, I'm a multilingual.
Yeah, very talented. I suppose they often do diagrams, don't they? But they're about as decipherable as the Mandarin.
But no, I think there is a serious point here. Men don't read instructions. They don't like asking for directions, but it's quite a good thing to want to figure things out for yourself, I think.
I think you're right.
Let's go with that. All right, Alex Stafford, Teresa Bischoff, thank you very much for joining us. Now, time is running out on your chance to win our biggest Great British giveaway to date. Miriam, what are we offering?
We are offering a motorhome worth over £67,000 and £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. So don't miss out. Here are all the details you need.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you, driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. It has plenty of room for your family of 4, comes complete with kitchen, bathroom and all the space you'll need for life on the road. And the best news? You can drive it on your existing driving licence. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Don't delay. You can't win if you're not in the draw. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries costs £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, you've had plenty of views with your newspaper reviews, but now it's Tatiana Sanchez who's got all of your news.
Charlie, thank you very much. The top stories. We start with that breaking news that French authorities have been condemned for detaining 2 British fishing boats in the same week. The Prime Minister was heavily criticised and accused of surrendering UK fishing rights to the EU. In the latest enforcement operation, the French Maritime Prefecture confirmed that a French patrol vessel had intercepted and seized a UK trawler off the Baie des Somme in the English Channel. The incident happened on Thursday, just hours after a record number of 825 small boat migrants had crossed illegally into UK waters. The move has infuriated local fishermen who operate in the channel. 3 boys and a woman have died in a house fire in Brent in northwest London. Met police officers are investigating after being called to assist firefighters in Tillock Close and Stonebridge near Wembley shortly after 1:20 this morning. A 43-year-old woman and 3 boys aged 15, 8 and 4 died at the scene. 2 others were taken to hospital. Police said they're awaiting an update on their conditions. A 41-year-old man was arrested at the scene in connection with the incident and remains in custody. At least 14 people have been injured in a major Russian missile and drone attack on Kyiv, according to city authorities. Russia launched 250 drones and 14 ballistic missiles against Kyiv, Ukraine's Air Force said, causing fires in residential buildings. It was one of the biggest combined aerial assaults on the city since the war began. The Air Force said it had downed 6 missiles and 245 drones. With each such attack, the world becomes more certain that the cause of prolonging the war lies in Moscow, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on X. This barrage came hours after Russia and Ukraine took part in a prisoner swap agreed after talks between the 2 countries' officials in Turkey. Speaking overnight, Zelensky said only additional sanctions targeting key sectors of the Russian economy could push Moscow to agree to a ceasefire. And thousands of criminals, including knife offenders, could face community sentences instead of short prison terms. It's all in a bid to crack down on overcrowding in prisons, which could see up to 43,000 criminals avoid prison each year. Exceptions, however, will be made for stalking and domestic abuse and order breaches. Rapists and sexual offenders, meanwhile, could be eligible for early release, with the aim of freeing up to 10,000 spaces. Those are the latest headlines for now. More from me at 12 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Coming up, we'll be talking to Niall Gardner, the man behind the campaign to get Prince Harry's visa documents released in the States.
And we'll also have an expert coming on to discuss some shocking social housing stats that have stunned parliamentarians and forced the cost of social housing right into our political conversation. All of that coming up after the break here on Saturday Morning Live.
Hello, very good morning to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. So we have had some pretty wet weather arrive overnight, and that rain is lingering across eastern parts at the moment, but it is going to push away towards the east as we go through the morning and head towards the afternoon. Behind it, something a bit drier, even some bright spells developing, but also a fair few outbreaks of showery rain, these coming in from the west, and some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side. Despite the fact that there will be more cloud compared to recent days, it's still going to feel warm enough for many, particularly across the eastern parts, and if you get any sunshine, it shouldn't feel too bad at all, temperatures peaking in the low 20s. But as we head towards this evening, there will be further showery outbreaks of rain around across much of Scotland. There's the chance of some scattered showers, some of them on the heavy side, perhaps some brighter or sunny spells towards eastern parts in particular. A cloudier story there across Northern Ireland and a wetter story with some persistent rain feeding its way in, and that same band of rain will be pushing its way into western parts of Wales and western parts of England as well. And that whole feature then is going to march its way eastwards across the country as we go overnight. So similar to last night, really, most places will see some rain at times. The heaviest rain, though, will be across parts of Scotland. Could see some relatively high totals building up, but because it's been so dry recently, it shouldn't cause too many issues. There will be some clear spells overnight, but despite these, because it's relatively unsettled, temperatures not dropping a huge amount, so a mild start to tomorrow, but it will be quite blustery, particularly across northern parts. Some wet and windy weather, risk of gales in exposed spots. Elsewhere, we're talking sunshine and a few showers. The showers most likely towards the north and west, drier towards the southeast with some decent sunshine here, and temperatures, well, widely in the mid to high teens. We may just about scrape into the low 20s. Whatever you're up to this weekend, have a great one.
Nigel is back.
Good evening.
Unfiltered.
Are these proposals bold enough?
Uncompromising.
Will it bring growth?
Unmissable.
We as a country are brilliant.
Nigel Farage returns. Coming soon. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the
GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. It's nearly 20 to 12, and amidst reports of the Labour cabinet at war, it's now emerged that Angela Rayner is specifically pushing for a major increase in spending on social housing before the conclusion of the government's spending review, which is highlighting tensions.
Now, while the Deputy Prime Minister has long supported more social housing as a personal mission, what's going on with affordable housing in this country, and what do the in-depth figures reveal? Well, joining us now to discuss this is senior researcher at the Prosperity Institute, Guy Dampier. We should say that the Prosperity Institute is owned by the Legarton Group, and the group is also one of the lead investors in the holding company of GB News. But Guy, thanks very much for joining us. Angela Rayner, in this social housing row, is she right to call for more spending on it?
Good morning. I don't think she is. We already have more social housing than most other countries in the OECD. And although social housing can be valuable to help people, ever since the 1970s, we've shifted from supporting families and supporting those in work to supporting those in need. And far too often that's meant that people are having more children than they need just to boost their place in social housing. We've got too many people who were born overseas who are accessing social housing, and we've got people who are refugees and aren't even British citizens who are accessing social housing. And that's all being paid for by the British taxpayer.
I think many people will assume that if you are over here on a short-term visa or seeking asylum, most people don't have recourse to public funds. They're not allowed to claim benefits during that time. And yet this report reveals that many local authorities have found a way around that. And many people who don't have access to public funds nevertheless have access to social housing. What can be done about this, Guy?
Absolutely. So there's something called no recourse to public funds. And the idea is that people who shouldn't have access, like certain working immigrants or refugees, shouldn't be able to access public funding. But there are ways around it. The big one generally is to do with homelessness and destitution, where you can have a material change of conditions and the authority can basically put you up in order to deal with that. Or if your children are at risk of homelessness, that also they have a statutory duty. But it's also the case that a lot of social housing or socially subsidised housing is not actually necessarily owned by the authorities. It's often run through RSLs or through housing associations. And these have their own rules. So you can conceivably get money from the council or from the government to spend and then spend it on housing, which you then give to people who are foreign nationals. But because it hasn't come directly from the government, it's not counted as a public fund.
Now, Angela Rayner might struggle to get her argument for more social housing over the line, Guy, because as she's making this intervention, an online publication called the Pimlico Journal has produced a very extensive report on the cost of social housing. I think we can show a graphic that GB News has got from the Pimlico Journal showing the cost of social housing in London there, 8.8 billion in rent to London social housing tenants. And Guy, talk us through some of the costs involved here.
So we are talking very, very big costs. So what this really interesting article has done is they have worked out what the implied rent subsidy is. So that means if you have a house which you could put on the market at £2,000 a month, but because it's social housing, it's £1,000 a month, then the implied rent subsidy is £1,000. And what they've worked out is that the amount of money going to people in social housing in London is enormous. So to give you an example, if you are in Kensington and Chelsea, your average rent subsidy or implied rent subsidy for a year is £23,000. So if you live in social housing, it's the equivalent of having an extra £23,000 in Kensington and Chelsea, which obviously a lot of people would quite like to have an extra £23,000. But even in Manchester, it's over £7,000 if you're in social housing. And in somewhere like Southwark, which is less nice in London, the implied value of all these rent subsidies over a year is still £661 million, which is compared to an annual budget of Southwark Council of 874 million. So these are staggering numbers of essentially subsidies, effective subsidies that the taxpayer is providing to a select few in social housing.
Guy, I think a lot of people will think that social housing has an important role to play, especially somewhere like London, where housing costs are so high and people on low-wage jobs otherwise can't afford to live anywhere near they work. And, of course, that's a problem. But what these figures reveal is that there are actually around 250,000 social homes in London being rented by people who are not working. That's not what social housing was originally for, is it?
Absolutely not. Up until the 1970s, social housing had very strict conditions on who could get it. So what we're actually talking about here is the taxpayers subsidising people without jobs to live in our nicest city, when a great many people who are working class or middle class even cannot afford to live in our own capital city. So we obviously should be changing this.
And Guy, there's a point here about immigration as well, isn't there? Because in these statistics that this publication in Pimlico Journal have brought forward, they found that 48% of social housing in London has gone to people who have been born out of the United Kingdom.
Yes, so it's an enormous number of people. I think many people would correctly say that if you're born overseas, even if you do become a British citizen, you shouldn't be able to access this kind of thing. And you can see even that people who aren't British citizens are able to access it. So with some of these groups, it becomes absolutely enormous. So, for example, 73.9% of households headed up by a Somali in London are in social housing. That's obviously far too much.
Well, Guy Dampier, thank you very much. That's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. But still to come, we will be joined by Niall Gardner, who's here to bring us up to date on everything in President Trump's administration and what's going on with Prince Harry's visa row.
But first, if you are in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations. You won't need a visa.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Whilst western parts of the Mediterranean are having some largely fine weather, it's a different story in the east. Here we have the risk of some heavy showers, which could bring some thunder, even some high rainfall totals, causing problems across parts of Greece, Bulgaria and into Turkey as well. Like I said, though, further west, it's a drier picture, some showery bursts round, but also a decent amount of sunshine on offer. And in the sunshine, it's going to feel pretty warm, if not hot as well.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Say that Mia Collins joins us in the studio now. Morning, Mia. Really good to meet you. And what's it like for you watching that experience back?
Lots of fond memories. I loved my time in the process, and you know, TV shopping was definitely one of the big highlights for me. I loved it.
Was it really?
Genuinely, I really enjoyed it.
Because I wonder how much of these challenges and tasks do you come away from thinking, oh, that was awful?
For me personally, there weren't many occasions where I thought, oh God, you know, what I've been able to do now is look back on all 10 episodes, and I'm actually really happy with my performance, so no regrets.
You're consistently strong.
Thank you.
That's why I was so shocked when you went out as number 6. I honestly thought you'd make it through to the final, but it was just that one mistake, wasn't it?
It was the wrong decision at the wrong time. Had it been another task, maybe I would have survived it through, but, you know, it's so difficult to get to that final 5, and Jordan and Anissa are really strong candidates, so I think I just drew the short straw.
I mean, did you go into it thinking this would help you as a business person, or is it a door to get into media, or I mean, what was the point of going on?
I think if you look at the kind of the general age of candidates nowadays, it's a younger audience, and I've grown up watching the show. So from my perspective, I'd always just grown up watching it, thinking, God, I really do think I could do that. I am in the midst of prep for my bodybuilding competitions, so my time is very always centred around training and trying to get as much content and insight into that as much as I can. I think bodybuilding is one of those sports that not many people know all too much about, and I think there's a few misconceptions of it. So if I can educate people and bring correct information about the sport through means that I enjoy, then so be it. And whatever comes of it, comes of it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 11 minutes to 12. You're watching Saturday Morning Live, and Prince Harry's visa row and the court case surrounding it sparked plenty of controversy. Now, it was the Heritage Foundation, based in Washington, D.C., that pushed for those details behind the Prince's visa to be exposed. And we're delighted to be joined in the studio by the director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation, Niall Gardner, who had an awful lot to do with that case. So, Niall, tell us, where are you in this campaign to get those visa documents exposed?
Well, it's great to see you, Miriam. Many thanks for having me on the show today. And the fight continues, of course, to release Prince Harry's immigration records to the American people. So the legal case continues on that front. There will be further developments, I think, in the next few weeks. And also, I think there's a very good chance that the Trump administration will make a decision ultimately to release the records. After all, there's a clear public interest, I think, in the release of the records to see whether or not Prince Harry lied on his US immigration application. And the Trump presidency is very committed, of course, to the full enforcement of US immigration law. So we'll have to see what's in Harry's records. If he lied on his application, that's a criminal offence. It would result in up to 5 years in prison or deportation. So stakes are very high for Prince Harry.
Now, just quickly on this issue of Prince Harry's visa, as you started this campaign under the previous American administration, have you found that the Trump administration is more open to the campaign you're running and are more transparent about releasing information?
Yeah, I think they're far more receptive, and I do believe it's only a matter of time before we see the release of Prince Harry's immigration records. And many US conservatives, of course, are strongly in support of the release of the records. So I do think it's just a matter of time, actually. And the Trump presidency, of course, has put in place very strong measures in terms of the enforcement of US immigration law. And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. No one is above the law, and that includes Prince Harry.
Now, let's move on to tariffs, because the big news yesterday was that Trump announced 50% tariffs on the EU, clearly getting frustrated with their negotiations or lack of them. Is he serious about implementing this, or is this just a tactic to get closer to a deal?
Well, I think that President Trump is very, very serious about applying tremendous pressure on the European Union. After all, the EU in many ways operates like a protectionist racket. And President Trump has thrown down the gauntlet to the European Union. For so many decades, they have had very damaging protectionist policies in place against the United States. And they're also about to impose all sorts of taxes on US digital companies, tech companies, etc. So this is viewed as unacceptable by Washington. And the US would like to see the EU lift all of their protectionist barriers against US companies and manufacturers. And I do think that President Trump's approach is the right one towards the European Union. And he's a Eurosceptic president. He believes the European project is not good, actually, for the United States. He's standing up to the Eurocrats in Brussels. So I think he's going to get a result here. I do think the EU is going to back down.
But, Niall, do you think that the answer to the EU's protectionist measures is to do some of your own in Washington? It's been fascinating to see, actually, think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, which have often been very pro-free trade and free markets. Now that Trump's come in, suddenly changing their tune somewhat, you might say, and suddenly discovering the great value in tariffs. Have you found that this is a sudden shift?
We remain, of course, fully committed to free and fair trade, and ultimately that's what we want to see in the relationship with the European Union. And the EU really doesn't believe in free trade at all. It's all about protectionism. You look at the Common Agricultural Policy, which is a huge mafia-style protectionist racket. And so we do want to see real, genuine free trade in process here.
We're going to have to leave it there now, but thank you so much. And thank you, all of you at home, for joining us on Saturday Morning Live today.
Absolutely, and don't go anywhere. We've got Alex Armstrong up next with The Weekend. Alex, what's coming up on your show?
Lovely to see you guys. Yes, we are going to bring you the live pictures from that horrendous, horrible house fire in London, as well as going straight to Mark White as well on that EU fishing story. That's going to be a developing one today, I'm sure of it. Of course, we're also going to talk about that two-tier justice scandal. Stay with us for The Weekend.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Well, it's a cloudy picture to start this long bank holiday weekend. Drizzle in places, we may see some brightness, but it is going to be feeling muggy out there. Taking a look at the bigger picture, this is that front that brought rain overnight. We'll see a bit of a squeeze in the ice bars and it will be turning particularly windy later on. So that rain has cleared its way through. It might turn a little bit brighter, especially across central parts of England. May even see just the shower developing. Out towards the west, cloudy here with outbreaks of rain and drizzle on and off before heavier rain arrives later. Otherwise, temperatures, well, it's a warm day out there, but humid and muggy with all that cloud and moisture. So as we go through Saturday evening and overnight, it's a cloudy picture across Scotland. Any breaks may